Hello, everyone.
Yeah,
Welcome. It's Alicia Brasher here at Cosmic Gateway in conjunction with World Unity Week. And honestly, it's such a great privilege and honor to be sitting here to present to you all David Icke. He's internationally known author and speaker. And in my personal opinion, he's the catalyst of the awakening of millions of people across this planet. So, David, welcome. And thank you so much for being here.
it's an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to it.
So, you know what? I thought what we might kind of start off with, you know, you have such decades of depth of work that we could dive into, and we could go into all sorts of different tangents. But I thought maybe we would just start right now in June 2021, and get your perspective and overview of what's happening on this planet right now. And I guess what's curious to me is, on a personal level, having walked such a path that you have over, many decades, how is that to you to see how things are unfolding, and, the work that you've put in over the years? What's that like for you to be kind of the observer and also the participator in that?
Well, it's mixed feelings, really. What I've been writing about all these years and talking about all these years is happening.
Mm,
So
yeah.
on that level, you think, well, at least my stuff was accurate. But the point of putting it all out over the last 31 years was to alert enough people to stop it manifesting. Although, to be fair, it was obvious to me a long time ago that things would have to get really bad
Mm,
before enough people would sort of lift their eyes from the game show and the sport and see that actually the world is not like they thought it was, certainly not run by the forces they thought it was.
mm, mm,
But there's a very positive side to all this. There really is. Um, when I started out in 1990, researching and talking about this. I mean, I was the village I was the village fool. I was
mm,
laughed at in the street, laughed at on the television, laughed at everywhere I went. And getting anyone to listen to this information was almost impossible. I mean, I've talked to some seriously small audiences, putting the chairs out. No one comes apart from a few speckled people, and then you put the chairs back and go home, and you think, what's the point? But there always has been a point, and that is that if what you're saying has validity, eventually events will show it to be so. And I know a lot of people that are new to this information and have been awakened to a different world by the COVID era. They say, why aren't more people waking up? But because I've been on this path such a long time, I come from a different perspective. I remember what it used to be like. Um, and so compared with that, there is a phenomenal awakening going on
mm,
that I was kind of told about 30 years ago was coming. My
mm,
first book on these subjects I called The Truth Vibrations,
mm,
because of a phenomenon I learned about, which was an awakening of humanity from the spiritual slumber, from the coma of five sense only perception. And more than any time before, that is happening. Of course, it's not happening to the majority, and a lot of people are going deeper into the coma because of buying the COVID lies and the COVID narrative. But a heck of a lot of people are coming out of it. And we've had a series of marches, indeed, rallies as well, but marches in London in through the spring, and there's another one on June the 26th. And the numbers have just got bigger and bigger and bigger. When people started protesting about the fascistic deletion of freedom in kind of the spring of 2020, there was a very few people turned up, and so the police could just sort them out and bring it to an end. But now we've reached the point where the police have got no chance of dealing with the numbers, because we're talking hundreds of thousands of people. But more than that, you know, I've been on protest marches through my life against wars and against injustice and against taxation that was unfair. But these are different. The energy and the attitudes of these freedom marches in London are, and indeed in other parts of Britain and the world, are very different. They're much more heart-centered. They're coming from a position of love. They're coming from a position of joy. They're coming from a position of respecting other people's right to their own opinion and their own perceptions of the world. And you can feel the energy that's generated by these marches. It's absolutely fantastic. And that is the energy, that is the vibration of the awakening, where we emerge from the prison cell of the five senses, where our only perception is, can we see it, touch it, taste it, hear it, etc., to actually, we are greater than that. Mm. That is the experiential level, but it's not the true I. The true I is consciousness, and that consciousness can be as wide and of the depth that we choose to allow in. So we are seeing, you know, you can see it on many levels. We are seeing a very clear division going on between those who are staying in the prison cell coma of the five senses and those that are emerging from it, because the energy, for a start, and from the energy and from the awareness, from the perceptions, the decisions that people are making are dramatically different. It's like awakened people who are allowing their consciousness to expand into its true state, as it should have been all along, can see things that the coma prison cell cannot see, and thus they're making different decisions. So they're not having the fake vaccines that are genetically modifying the population that have them. They're not wearing the masks that are just designed to make us literally faceless and suppress our individuality and manipulate psychology and to drive us apart and lose our sense of individuality and lose the fundamental communication that facial movement gives us and facial expressions give us. They're not doing that. They're not falling for the fear of some manufactured, and when I say manufactured, I don't mean made in a lab in Wuhan, I mean made up virus, which is simply given the illusion of existing by a test that's not testing for it. As the creator of the test, the PCR test, said it couldn't detect infectious disease or tell you if you're sick or not. And saying that if you test positive with this test, not testing for the virus, and you die within 28 days or longer of any other cause, then COVID-19 goes on your death certificate. All these things together are giving the illusion of the existence of something that has never been shown. There is no scientific paper on planet Earth to show that this SARS-CoV-2 exists, and lots of evidence to show that it doesn't. And so the awakening people, the truly awakening people, are seeing that. They're seeing through the lies. And it's very clearly clear that basically two societies are emerging based on two completely different perceptions of reality.
Yeah, so well said and so well summarized. And you can see that splitting, can't you? And you know, I've noticed in my own life, and many people have spoken about it. It's like, yeah, these two realities are simultaneously sort of coexisting, but there is this kind of division, and it's very, very obvious. I mean, you kind of touched on it then, and you touched on one of my questions that I had in terms of you stated that, you know, while you were doing this work, and you know, for the 30 years, you've always sort of had a knowing or stated that things would have to get a lot worse until we hit sort of a tipping point or a breakthrough. Do you see that that's where we're at? Are we at that precipice, or do you feel there's more to come from the unraveling of what COVID has brought us and the flow on?
There's a lot more to come, but I do think 2021 is a pivotal year. Yeah. From the perspective of questioning the official narrative. Anyone that does that and has done that up to this point will see that it's a pack of lies. And if you take that on through 2021 and what is planned to come, with all the invented variants to try to terrify people into conformity and acquiescence and submission, all of them made up, then by the end of 2021, we are going to see globally, pretty much, we're going to see the numbers we're looking at. We're going to see the numbers by then who've seen through it. And it will be more than it is now. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see the numbers that, despite reality being glued to their nose, they still cannot see it. Mm. And from then we are going to see which state of mind prevails. And of course, there is the great fear among those that are behind this, what I call the global cult, a network of secret societies with a central leadership, that that the awakening will overwhelm their plans to create a global fascist, centralized global fascist dictatorship. And so the demonization is on. You well know that in Australia, as I do in Britain.
Oh, yeah.
Is on of those that won't buy the narrative. And so we're going to see, ironically, we're going to see the effect on those who have been vaccinated with these vaccines that don't even fulfill the criteria and definition of a vaccine, because it's not what they're there for. We're going to see, because of the synthetic material that's being infused into people in these vaccines, synthetic genetic material, which they are having to use a trickery, which they call the Trojan horse technique, to get the immune system and the cellular system to open up and allow this synthetic material in, this mRNA, as they call it, messenger RNA, when the body, without the trickery, would reject it. So we're being infused with stuff, well, we aren't, but the people agree to it are, infused with genetic material, which synthetic, which the body would normally reject, and it's been tricked into accepting. And it's self-replicating, so it's every hour once you've been vaccinated, it's going further and further and further into the body, into more and more cells. So we've seen already the fantastic adverse reaction numbers and deaths from these fake vaccines, which the media are covering up disgustingly with the authorities. But the longer term effects of this synthetic material self-replicating in the body are going to be much greater than the initial effects. And as those effects manifest, and we're going to see that through 2021 into 2022 and onwards, the effects are going to be called new variants and more deadly variants of, quote, COVID-19. And those that are not vaccinated with this synthetic material, they're going to be pointed at by the authorities, the media, and those still in the prison cell coma. It's your fault. If you'd have been vaccinated, this wouldn't be happening. When in fact, it will be happening because of the people that have been vaccinated. So, you know, spirituality is not just a concept, it's a state of being. And I've just got this new book's just come off the presses, just available now, called Perceptions of a Renegade Mind.
Oh, I love it.
And a renegade mind is different from even a questioning mind and a inquiring mind, because a questioning mind can question, and through questioning can see, but still say, but if I do anything about what I can see, what are the consequences for me? And if you ask, what are the consequences for me of doing what you know to be right, you'll always find a list long enough to stop you doing what you know to be right. A renegade mind is different. A renegade mind questions, inquires, critically thinks. But then when it's concluded what it sees, it then says, and I'm not cooperating with what I see. I'm not cooperating with this agenda for vaccines and masks and all this other stuff. I'm not doing it. We have a columnist in Britain on the Daily Mail newspaper. Well, actually, it's the Mail on Sunday newspaper. And he's called Peter Hitchens. And he was one of the few journalists through 2020 who was pushing back on the lockdowns and the reasons for them. Mm-hmm. So he's a questioning mind, he's an inquiring mind. But then when they started rolling out the fake vaccines, he announced in a column suddenly out of nowhere that he'd had it. And he said, I've had it because I want to visit my family abroad, and they're going to bring in COVID passports. And if I don't have it, I won't be able to visit my family abroad. Now, a renegade mind would say, I'm not doing it. Mm. I know what this is for. I know why it's being pressured on people. I know why they want to vaccinate every man, woman, and child on the planet, because nothing to do with a virus. So I'm not doing it. Oh, well, you won't be able to go abroad then. Well, I won't go abroad then. You won't be able to do this. Well, I won't do it then. You won't be able to go to a restaurant. I won't go then. I'm not doing it. I'm not acquiescing with my own enslavement. I'm not doing what you tell me to do. And okay, well, we'll do this if you don't. Well, do it then, because I'm still not doing it. And this is what a renegade mind does. And it comes from a position of a different self-identity. If you get pulled into the 5 sense prison cell mind of only seeing everything through the 5 senses, of self-identifying the I with the labels of the 5 sense world, I am this race, I am that race, this sexuality, that sexuality, I am ours, as I call them, phantom selves, then you see the world in a certain way, and you can think, in my life of the 70 years and 10, what are the consequences for me of doing this? And like I say, you'll find reasons not to do it. So what a renegade mind does, actually a renegade heart in truth, it says, look, I'm not going to ask what are the consequences for me of doing what I know to be right, because that means I am contemplating not doing what I know to be right. That is unthinkable and unimaginable to a renegade mind, a renegade heart. And by the way, I am not those labels that people identify with. They are simply experiences that my consciousness, the true I, the infinite I, is having in a tiny band of frequencies called visible light and the electromagnetic spectrum. And when it's over, I will continue my exploration of infinity infinitely. So what happens to me in this little experience we call human, very brief, is of no importance given my identification with the greater infinite whole, to the extent that I will not do what I know to be right because I fear what will happen to me in that little experience. I'm not going to go down the road of consequences. I'm going to do what I know to be right, and what happens happens. And know what you find, and I found this in my life. I tell you, everything that we are thinking, everything that we are feeling, all our thoughts and mental processes, our emotional processes, they're all represented as frequencies. Love is a very different frequency, energy to hate. Fear is a very different frequency to love. Joy is a very different frequency to depression. So all the time we're giving off these frequencies. And we are interacting with a infinite field of possibility and probability. And I call it the field. And it works like this. The body has a decoding system, a reality decoding system that we call the five senses. So the field is a waveform. Think Wi-Fi. Think of Wi-Fi field. It's a radiation field, a waveform field. Mm-hmm. And within it is all possibility, all probability waiting to manifest, all potential waiting to manifest. And because of the nature of the decoding processes of the human body, we see a ridiculously narrow band of visual reality. It's called visible light, and it is pathetically narrow. People say, well, I can see everything in the space I'm looking at. You can only see a smear of what exists in the space you're looking at. Most of it, the infinity within that space is denied you because you're only decoding reality within a narrow band of frequency. And within that band of frequency, what we decode is that within the frequency of what we call form. Actually, it's holographic, but we'll call it form, what we perceive to be physicality. So I'm looking at a computer, I'm looking at a filing cabinet, I'm looking at a radiator. They're form. Mm-hmm. And in between them, I'm seeing empty space, because that's the decoding system of the body. But if we could see further into visual reality, and some people, of course, can, mm-hmm. then we would see that there is no empty space, that everything is connected by one infinite field of potentiality, consciousness, awareness. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we are interacting with that field, with our emotions, with our thoughts, with our perceptions. And because the perceptions and feelings and thoughts all operate on different frequencies depending on their nature, they are dictating, we are perceptually dictating what parts of that field we are interacting with, in exactly the same way that by going on a computer, I can dictate what part of the Wi-Fi field, which contains the entirety of the internet, I'm going to put on the screen of the computer. My perceptions, of course, are deciding what goes on the screen, because my perceptions are dictating where I go on the internet. and in the wider manifestation of reality, we're doing the same with our perceptions. And where I'm going with this is that if you do what you know to be right, that's an energy. It's a frequency you're giving off, and you're interacting with the field of potentiality within that frequency. And what tends to happen is when you do what you know to be right, the consequences that you may perceive to be coming as a result often don't come at all. Because you're creating the very fact that you are in that energetic frequency state of, I'm in my power, I'm doing what I know to be right. And I'm not going through a list of consequences, wondering if I should do it. Because if you're going through a list of consequences for doing what you know to be right, what are you doing? Those perceptions and concerns about consequences are going into the field of potentiality, and you are very likely to manifest those consequences.
Correct.
Whereas if you just do what you know to be right, especially if you do it in enough numbers, often the consequences don't manifest. And where they do, they often lead to something great that you never thought they would. So it's a very different way of looking at the world and looking at life. But the point is this global cult of secret societies maintains secrets, not for a bit of a laugh, but because they have to keep fundamental information about the nature of reality, the nature of the human eye, from the population. Because when the population's in an understanding of the true I and the true power and the true potential to control our reality and experience, then they're no longer mass controllable. If you want to mass control the human population, you want them in the five senses, and the five senses alone, so that all their sense of reality is being filtered through the five senses. And what do the five senses do? I've just described it. They see everything as apart from everything else. They don't see the unity. They see the division. And you'll see with the efforts to create racial division and sexuality division, men and women division, they want to create this division all the time. So in this other world of the cults and the secret societies, and even then I mean the inner core, not Fred and Joe the Freemasons down the lodge, they understand the nature of reality, and they understand how we interact with it. They understand how our perceptions become our reality in the way I'm describing. And they know that, therefore, if they can control our perception, for a start, they control our frequency. What if they put you into severe states of fear? That's a density. Into states of anxiety, that's energetic density. Depression, that's an energetic density. What do people say when they're in those states? Oh, I feel so heavy today. Yes, because you're feeling the density of the field because of the frequency that it's vibrating on. And therefore, if you fall into those low vibrational states, you're going to interact with the field within the frequency band of those low vibrational states, and you're going to keep manifesting that reality. It's a feedback loop. So they know if they control your perceptions, they control your frequency, they control your perceptions, they control your behavior. And collectively, human behavior becomes human society, so they control human society. This has been so blatantly obvious in the COVID era. It's been on public. People only want to see it. So what they're terrified of is that we understand that en masse or in very large numbers and start to realize, hold on, my perceptions dictate my reality. Now, if I take my perceptions from an external source, the media, the government, the health authorities, all these people, if I take my perceptions from them, my perceptions are still dictating my reality, except they're not my perceptions. I've just downloaded them from these sources. Exactly. So if I take control back of my perception, not least of the nature of the true I, then I start to create a different reality, because as my perceptions change, my frequencies that I'm projecting change, that within the field that I interact with must change, and therefore my life experience changes. And you know, most people don't live, they exist. They don't live life, life lives them, because they're taking their perceptions from all these mainstream sources. Those perceptions become their experience. And so life is living them because they're not playing a part in it. But when you take your perceptions back and you start dictating your own, you start to come to your own conclusions and your own enlightenment, then the world changes, your life changes, because you're interacting with the field in a completely different way. This is why people that think they have no power, I'm just little me, I just work in the supermarket or drive a bus, that's who I am, that's my I. That perception of self perpetuates a reality. You look at the I've got no power, I'm just little me people. They live I have no power, little me lives, not because they have to, but because their perceptions become their reality. Whereas those that will not have that. That say, I am all it is, has been, and ever can be, a unique expression of that, having a human experience, then their lives are different. Their lives are much more of an adventure rather than a constantly repeating, repetitive existence. And the only difference between the two is self-identity and perception of self.
Beautifully summarized. And I almost feel like you've almost painted a roadmap in giving people access to being able to shift and change their perception and thus their reality around them. And, this may be new information for some people watching, or this could be, adding to the context of what they already know. But, I guess what I'm hearing back, and I'm just going to interpret what some of the things that you've said, but it's like to have information, to have knowledge is powerful, because then it's then reconnecting and claiming your sovereignty, which is unifying and bringing in more unity and driving out the separation. And through that, connecting with the heart center space, connecting with love and that powerful force that radiates. And when each individual can do that, the ripple effect. And so as more people go through this process, it changes the greater reality. And that's really what we're striving for through this transitional phase. So thank you so much for going into depth and sharing about the new upcoming book. I'm super excited about that one. But I do want to kind of change and go down a different path, and something that's really quite curious to me in terms of your own personal journey, because obviously this is what you've just shared with us is something that is you've come into awareness, or has it always been there for you? Obviously our knowledge and experiences evolve as we grow as human beings, but has there always been that inner knowing within you about vibrations, frequency, the field, and how that changes? Or how has that, opened up?
Well, I mean, when the top of my head blew off in 1990, and I had some amazing, you might call, paranormal experiences, which drove me in this direction 31 years ago. I look back at my life before that,
Yep.
and I realized that actually it had been a chain of events that had led me there. That actually it all started when I arrived.
Mm.
And when I was a kid, I always had the feeling I was here to do something. I didn't know what it was. I thought for a while it was to be a footballer. And I became a footballer. It didn't last terribly long
You
because
did
I've got
that.
arthritis. But and then I became a journalist, and then I became a national spokesman for the British Green Party. I became a national television presenter for the BBC, and it seemed to be a very varied life. And I noticed that there was something very strange going on. Eventually, it reached a point where the synchronicity of my life was so ridiculous. I thought, what's going on? Something's going on. Because I would decide on, I want to do something, and I would achieve it. And I would achieve it not least by a series of synchronistic events in which I was in the right place at the right time, again and again and again and again. And it was just so obvious eventually to me that something's going on here. And then I've always been questioning of authority right back to a kid at school.
Mm.
I always said to authority, whether it was a teacher or whatever, okay, I'll listen to you, but you've got to persuade me. You're right. I'm not just accepting it because you've said it. So I've always been a bit of a rebel, a bit of a renegade, if you like. And but and
I'll
and
say
I've
the new name of your book.
all the way through in those years before all this really exploded, I rejected religion as an explanation. Not that there aren't some strands of stuff in religion that are like common around the world and common with non-religious cultures, which are part of a common truth. But what my father called bricks and mortar religion, I rejected. But I always, through my life, thought the idea that we're a cosmic accident that's come out of nowhere and goes into nowhere, that life's a bitch and then you die, it don't make sense to me at all. But I was getting on with my life, trying to be a footballer, trying to be a television presenter, journalist, and all that stuff. And I'd not formed in my mind what I felt was going on. I just knew that I'd rejected both of them. And then towards the end of the 80s, some very strange things started to happen to me. Whenever I was in a room alone, it felt like I wasn't. This went on for a year. And it became so obvious and tangible in the spring, March, actually, of 1990, that I was in a hotel room alone working for the BBC, and I just spoke out into the room. I said, would you, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you'll drive me up the wall. This has gone on for a year.
Right.
And then a series of things happened, coincidences again, but not really, which led me to a professional psychic in the late March 1990. And I sat in her front room, and she started telling me that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. At the time, I was a television presenter with the BBC and a national spokesman for the Green Party. It all seemed kind of very strange and very crazy. But, partly answering your question, there was some level of me that thought, you've got to go with this. You've got to go with this. I mean, on the face of it, to the five sense mind, we're back to that. To the five sense mind, you're having a laugh, mate. But something within me said, you've got to go with this. You've got to go with this. And so I went with it. And there's lots of other stuff she said to me, all of which has come true. And I went with it. And my life changed dramatically. And I went through mass ridicule and abuse and all that stuff, which made me immensely strong in terms of emotion and speaking my truth. And the whole thing has unfolded as the last 30 years has gone on. So I do feel that it's pretty obvious that I did come to do something. I just didn't know what it was when I was a kid. And still in the process of doing it.
Yeah, wow. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was kind of in my next line of questioning. And I love hearing about that part of your story, about feeling that presence and the tangibility to it. And being that it's kind of interlaced with the work that I do, that's a part of my own curiosity. But when you went to see Betty shine, and I'm going to have to try and say this without getting emotional, because something hits me in the heart every time I hear this, but she said, one man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that changes the world. And I hope that I paraphrased that correctly, but that every time I've heard that, that hit me in the heart. And I want to ask you, what was that like in two parts to this question? What was that like to you, to your human self in the moment when that message was delivered? Was there an inner resonance and knowing that that was a truth for you? Or was that kind of like a scrambling to your human, like, what?
No, this was the strange thing, is that Betty was telling me things that to the five sense mind should have been perceived as ridiculous. But to me, it's like I already knew it in a strange way. And certainly when I left her front room that day and got on a train to go to London to present a television program, I'd committed myself to going with it. By that time, I'd long concluded that, death is not the end. It's just a transformation of perceptual attention. It's just a transformation of attention. That's what we call death is. It's leaving the focused attention that the body gives us by decoding this band of frequency we call visible light. And when you leave the body, your attention changes because you're no longer being subjected to that focus of attention that's which the body does. And so your perception expands. And you know, I've read enormously over the years of near-death experiences, where people describe this transformation of reality once you leave the body. Well, why? Because you're no longer subject to the body's focus of attention, which is what it does by decoding your sense of visual reality within a tiny band of frequencies we call the human world. And so I'd concluded, you know, even by then, that, you know, life goes on. And I thought, by going with this, what's the worst I can do? I completely mess up a short human life. I think I can cope with that. And so I went with it. And, you know, it's something deep within you, overcoming the perceptual decoding sense of reality of the five sense mind, that keeps you going when your five sense mind is experiencing things as I did, all of which was saying to you in the ridicule and the dismissal and the abuse, what you wasting your life doing this for? It's going nowhere. Look at it. No one's interested. But there's another level of you that's just won't let go, just has to keep going. And eventually the waters break, and it can take a long time, but eventually the waters break. And then you realize what your struggles were all about. Because, you know, I have this phrase, life gives you your greatest gifts brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. Yeah. And all those struggles not only made me immensely strong, not only freed me of the prison that most people live in, which is the fear of what other people think, it was also a magnificent source of information about the human psyche, about the way the human psyche works, about the way programming works, how perceptions control people, and also about the wider information. So I look back at my life, and I wouldn't change a day of it. I wouldn't change any of it, because every experience, no matter what it was, whether I liked it or didn't, and, you know, in many cases, the ones I didn't like even more, gave me something. They gave me something. You know, imagine, you know, you are brought up in a household where your parents do everything for you. Any little worry you have, they sort out. Any problem you have, they sort out, and it's all done for you. And then at some point, you've got to walk out into the world where your parents can't do it for you anymore. And so many of those people are completely lost. They don't have the life skills. They've not had the struggles. They've not had to overcome adversity because it's been overcome for them. And, you know, protecting kids from every challenge and every upset and every disappointment is not a good thing, because, you know, you go out into the world and you're going to face that in abundance. And if you've been through struggling times and you've had to overcome adversity, then you're there. You're ready for it. You know what it's like. You have that strength. Yeah. And life's like that. My life was like that. I had a lot of challenges, and I don't resent any of them. I don't resent any of the people that gave me those challenges, because it was an experience that added to my knowledge, added to me. And, you know, we get mesmerized by personalities, and instead of seeing the experience as the point. So people go through life resenting what someone did to them, or what they perceive they did to them. oh, you know, they did that in 1963. That's the reason I'm in trouble in this situation now. It's their fault. And you say, well, actually, they gave you an experience and it was your choice how you responded to it. You could say, oh, this is an experience that is going to help me expand and grow as a human being. Or you can see it as something to resent and something to seek revenge for. And this is another thing, you see. You know, I was talking earlier about how perception becomes reality in this feedback loop with the field of potentiality. When you say, I'm in this situation because of Mr. A or Mrs. B, what you're actually saying is, I'm not in control of my life, not in control of my experience. Mr. A or Mrs. B is. So you're externalizing your power. You're giving your power away. You give the power away to them. You're saying, I'm in this situation because of them. Mm. But when you realize that it's your perceptions that are interacting with the field of potentiality and manifesting the experience, if you're going to have an experience, a human experience, you need humans to help you have that experience. Mm. So why did you pull Mr. A and Mrs. B into your life and not another Mr. A and Mrs. B that would have treated you differently? Mm. Because they were, without knowing, of course, they were facilitators of your experience, part of your growing. Yeah. And if you just focus on the experience, don't personalize it, just focus on the experience. Okay, I didn't like what you did and I didn't like what you did, but they gave me this experience. What is this experience given to me? How can I use it to become a greater human being? And if we see experiences like that and depersonalize them, then we can take this whole conflict, resentment, these fault lines of conflict and resentment that cause so much upset in the world. You know, what we call forgiveness. Well, you know, you gave me a great experience with hindsight was so important to me. And you did it by treating me in a way I didn't want to be treated. But when I look at what it gave me in the longer view of life, what am I forgiving? What am I forgiving you for? You gave me this experience.
You gave me a gift, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a completely different way of looking at life, and depersonalizing it, I think, is very important, because that can pull you into conflict and upset, which is missing the point. Yeah. We are creating our reality via our perceptions, and we need to take control of our perceptions back, so that we directly control our reality and not dictate it via someone else's input. And so by seeing an experience for what it is, an opportunity to become wiser, greater, stronger, and depersonalizing the nature of the experience, we can take the good stuff from it, and we can not get entangled in the bad that causes so much conflict, upset, and ridiculous division that's completely unfounded in reality.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm always a big advocate for saying depersonalization is key and is critical. And so I guess what I want to do is bring it full circle, because this is, you know, a recording for World Unity Week. I'd love to hear what you have to share about when we have the ability to connect with that vibration and frequency of unity and love, and how that can impact our lives and how that ripple effect can affect the collective field.
Well, this cult sets out, because it understands how this works, and knowledge is not good or bad, it just is. It's how you use it. A microphone, a journalist's computer keyboard is not good or bad, it's how you use it. And so when people say, oh, it's the occult, well, hold on a minute. The word occult just means hidden. It's hidden knowledge. And that hidden knowledge can be used to change the world for the better, or it can be used to enslave the human collective mind, which is what it's being used for. So it's how you use it. And this cult wants to control the field in the same way that if you want to control all the fish, you don't go for the fish, you go for the sea, you go for the ocean. Because if you can control the ocean, you control everything in the ocean. So the more that they can manipulate us into low vibrational states of emotion and low vibrational states of mental perception, the more, going back to what I talked about earlier, we are broadcasting these low frequency states of being into the field. We're changing the field, we're lowering the vibration of the field. And when these dark occultists, I'll use that phrase to differentiate, do their rituals at particular parts of the Earth energetic grid, they are seeking to infuse, vaccinate that low vibrational energy into the field at particularly powerful vortex points, which affect the field even more powerfully than if you did it somewhere else. And so we're interacting with the sea, the field, and it is an interaction. We're affecting it by what we're giving out, and it's affecting us by its own state of being. And what this cult wants to do is to keep the vibrations of the field, the frequency of the field, in a low vibrational state that resonate with depression, with anxiety, with fear, so that's influencing is all the time. People have this background anxiety. It's almost like a white noise in the background, this anxiety, to the point where people think that when they're less anxious, they're happy. They perceive happiness to be less unhappy than they were a few hours ago or a few days ago, when actually joy is not the being less happy. It's being totally joyous, and in the knowledge of the infinite nature that we are constantly, eternally exploring forever. I mean, all potential. I mean, it never runs out. So in the reverse sense, when we open our hearts and we connect with vastly expanded states of awareness, which is what this connects us into. This is why we get intuition here. We don't get intuition here or intuition here. We get intuition here, and you look at the body language. I'm thinking. I know. I just know, because you are instinctively going to the point where that knowingness is coming from, the heart vortex within the human energetic field. And when that opens, and this cult wants to close it through all its low vibrational emotion, broken heart, and a heart of stone. You see the way that the phrases over centuries have related to the heart state, whether it's open heart, or closed heart, and heart of stone, hardened heart, etc., or heartless. Heartless. And heartless is what happens when you close your heart and your perceptions, thus your behavior, goes from the gut and the head. It's connected from this. So when this opens, we are broadcasting that frequency into the field. We're starting to affect the field. We're infusing the field with heart energy, which is far more powerful than the low vibrational emotional energy, and it starts to break it up. You know, when people say, oh, that this person, that person, or they've got this fantastic aura, they give off this aura. Well, that's simply their state of perception, their state of being, being broadcast as a frequency. It's what you're feeling, and so opening your heart is not just some trite spiritual phrase. It's actually physics, in the sense that its effect on the field, and the more people do that, the more you expand your awareness, the more sensitive you become to the field, and all this so-called sixth sense starts to become part of your life, and as the field changes, starts to be infused with love and joy, all the things I talked about in these London marches for freedom, then that starts affecting other people, because the frequency of the field is changing, and they get touched by it, and they get affected by it. It starts to affect their field, and they start changing their perception and what they're giving off, and it becomes a self-perpetuating thing, and eventually runs away, and the field changes, and this nonsense is all over. And so when people use this phrase, we are all one, again, it's physics. We are all one. The five sense mind can only see form with empty space in between. So we are all one is like bewildering to it. What are you talking about? But when you start to become aware of the field, and even if you can't see it, you become sensitive to it, you feel it, then you realize what we're all one means. We're all a unique point of attention within an infinite flow of consciousness, and within that level of consciousness, we are all the same consciousness, having different experiences, because we are unique expressions of that consciousness through the nature of our own experience, which has given us a uniqueness. So this idea that we are all one means that we're all a blob. I'm oneness, and I'm oneness, you're oneness. No, to celebrate uniqueness, to celebrate diversity, to celebrate your own individual sovereignty is also to celebrate being part of one whole. The two are the same. And so we can, this is the point about the five senses. The five senses connect us to this reality. So if we want to experience this reality, we experience it through the five senses. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how you experience it. We have a body for a reason. But if you become so mesmerized by that level of perception that you believe that is your entirety, then it's a perceptual bubble, basically. It's a bubble that disconnects you from an influence of your greater self, which is always there. I'm here. Can you hear me? And in the bubble, I didn't hear anything. But when the bubble bursts, and it bursts when you move your sense of self-identity from I am my labels to I am the consciousness having the experience called the labels, then, can you hear me? Oh, yes, I hear you. And everything changes.
It sure does. It sure does. David, I can't thank you enough. This has just been the most magnificent conversation. It's been so powerful, so influential. I want to thank you so much for the, you know, 3 decades, and I'll say plus because it's been a lifelong journey for you, as you've very clearly, elaborated and shared with us in this segment. Before we close off, I just want to say if you aren't familiar with David's work, I highly encourage you to go and check out his books, out his online media. I will put all the links where you can go and have a look in the description box below. And before we close off, would you like to share a little bit about? I mean, you mentioned about your book that's on its way. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that people can connect with up and coming for you in your projects?
Um, there's um, there's the book that's literally off the presses. It's starting to be posted out on Monday,
Oh,
but unfortunately, the shipping problem, it won't be August until August in America, North America. Behind me is the logo of Iconic, which is a media platform. It's like an alternative Netflix, if you like,
it's
which
amazing.
was started by my son, and it's been fantastically successful, and it covers the whole range of esoteric subjects, everything from the nature of the global conspiracy, big time the nature of reality. And I've just written about 14 scripts, which I'm going to turn into programs very soon. And it's about the nature of reality. And we've got a fantastic animation company we work with, which can create animations to make visual the kind of things I've been talking about in this lovely chat, by the way. And I think that it will be very interesting for people to see a visual expression of
Yeah.
how reality works, and how we can create our own experience instead of our experience creating us. I'm looking forward to that. And we just have to keep going and doing what we know to be right. And what happens, happens.
Wonderful.
Bottom line, we are all that is, has been, and ever will be, and always will be all that is and ever
Mm.
will be.
Thank you so much, David. I will put all the details for Iconic down below, and I really encourage everyone to go and have a look and really expand your mind and really get into this information and this wealth of knowledge that you have presented and have to offer over decades. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everybody for watching, and keep expanding, everyone. Much love.